Today we will study about light emitting diode, LED and our laser. First of all, let us talk about LED. LED stands for our light emitting diode. It stands for our light emitting diode. Light emitting diode. When I say light emitting diode, it simply means it is a diode circuit. It is a PN junction which emit light when proper biasing is provided to this junction, this diode. Okay, first of all, we already know that our LED is fabricated using direct band gap semiconductors, and we have studied that direct band gap semiconductors are the semiconductors where the electron from valence band reaches to conduction band, electron from valence band to reaches the conduction band, and when it comes back from conduction band to the valence band, it gives up its energy in the form of light, So when it gives its energy in the form of light, that light is emitted from our PN junction, and we use this principle for fabrications of our LED, light emitting diodes. First of all, the basic working principle of LED or light emitting diode is based on electroluminescence. It is based on electroluminescence. Electroluminescence is a simple principle which means that the electrical energy is converted into light energy. Okay, so LEDs are always emitting light, or LED will always emit light when it is properly biased, and it will work only during our forward bias condition. If LED is reverse bias, LED will not work. It will only work during forward bias condition. The materials which are generally used for our LED are direct band gap semiconductors, and one of those semiconductor is our gallium arsenide. Gallium arsenide is an important semiconductor. Gallium and arsenic are our impurities. Gallium and arsenic are not our semiconductors, but since gallium is a trivalent impurity and our arsenic is a pentavalent impurity, so when they both combine, a gallium will have 3 and arsenic will have 5 electrons, so they will somehow work as a tetravalent, that is your 4 valence electron material. So gallium arsenide is a direct band gap semiconductor. Okay, now when we talk about LED, for proper working of LED, we need that our LED should be forward bias. I have told you this thing. So our LED will work when it is forward bias. If this is our bias voltage, this is our LED. This is the symbol of LED, symbol of diode, and we will have 2 arrows over this symbol. This is the symbol of LED. If RS is a series resistance, or it is used to limit the resistance, because if the current flowing through the LED is large, then the power rating of LED, then the LED may burn. So we need a series resistance to limit this current, and the emission of light in our LED is due to recombination of electrons and holes at the junction. It is simply a PN junction. If I draw this diagram, it is simply a PN junction. P-type semiconductor made from gallium arsenide, N-type semiconductor made from gallium arsenide. There will be this depletion region. When it will be forward biased, P connected to positive terminal of the battery and N connected to negative terminal of the battery. When it will be forward bias, the electron and holes, the holes from our, the majority charge carrier holes from our P side and minority charge carrier electrons from our N side, they will move under the influence of this applied voltage, as we know that during the forward biasing. So they will tend to cross the junction and they will recombine in this your at your junction. So due to this recombination, during this recombination, the electron will emit its energy in the form of light, and light will be emitted. The cut-in voltage for LED is approximately 1.3 volt to 1.5 volt. We say that cut-in voltage is the voltage after which the LED will emit light. As we know that every PN junction has a potential barrier. Like for the case of silicon, we have said that the potential barrier is of 0.7 volt. That was its contact potential. The contact potential or potential barrier or cut-in voltage for LED is same. In case of LED, we term it as contact potential, we term it as cut-in voltage. So at voltage between 1.3 volt to 1.5 volt, the diode, this LED will start to emit the light. Okay, and our LED can emit the light either in visible range or in our infrared spectrum. We have two type of LEDs depending upon our this emission. If the light is visible to us, then it will be in visible spectrum, and if light is not visible to us, it will be in infrared spectrum. Like if I talk about LEDs which is used in our remote, television remotes, the remote also have LED, but the light emitted from our remote LED is not visible to us. But when we try to see the light from that LED using our mobile, we can see a bluish color light emitting from our LED. That bluish color light is in our infrared spectrum, IR spectrum, infrared range. That's why we are not able to see with our eyes. Okay. So the IR spectrum LEDs are used in our remote controllers and applications like them, and our visible LEDs are used everywhere. The light which can be emitted by our LED in visible spectrum can be only of one of the following colors. Either it can emit green light, green, yellow, orange, red, amber and white. These are the colors which our LED can emit in visible spectrum: green, yellow, orange, red, amber and white. Any color out of these colors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, any color out of these 6 colors can be obtained from our LED depending upon our material. And if LED is emitting a color which is not in the 6 colors, then it means that LED is emitting light with help of some external supply, some external means. For example, if I am saying that we have an LED which is emitting blue color, but we know that blue color is not emitted by our LED. So how it is emitting blue color? The simple answer is we will use a LED which will emit white color, and then I can coat the LED with the blue color, so this white color will appear blue to us. Okay, so this is how we can design, we can get different colors from LED, but these 6 are the basic colors which are emitted by our LED. Now the color of LED depends on different factors. The color which will be emitted by LED depends on band gap. It depends upon band gap. It depends upon wavelength. It depends upon dopant, the type of dopant we have used, and then it depends upon concentration of dopant. What is the concentration of dopant which we are using in our LED? So our color emitted by LED will depend upon these 5 factors. First of all, we have said that the LED emitting having direct band gap will the material having direct band gap will emit light. So clearly it depends upon our band gap. If the band gap is indirect, the energy will be emitted in the form of heat and there will be no light. Okay. When we talk about wavelength, the wavelength of radiated light, if I say that lambda is the wavelength of radiated light, then lambda equals to 1.24 divided by Eg micrometer, where Eg is our energy gap. So this means larger the energy gap, smaller will be the wavelength of light which is emitted by our LED. Fine. If I talk about wavelength and frequency, we know that the wavelength and frequency are related, like we know that wavelength and frequency are interrelated, and the wavelength and frequency are the relation between them is lambda equals to C divided by F, where lambda is the wavelength of the light, F will be the frequency, and C is our speed of light. Okay, so if I say that frequency is high, that means the wavelength of light will be small. If frequency is small, that means the wavelength will be high, because speed of light C is constant. It is 3 into 10 to the power 8 meter per second, so it remains constant, and our relation between lambda and frequency is inverse. Okay. Similarly, we have dopant. The type of dopant which we are using will also help us to determine color. For example, if I am having if I'm saying that we have gallium phosphate GaP, gallium phosphate material. This gallium phosphate, this phosphate is again a dopant. If I am saying that gallium is we are using direct band gap semiconductor, and we are considering that phosphate is our dopant, then this gallium phosphate emits green color light. And if I use gallium arsenic phosphate, it will emit either orange color or yellow color. So the type of dopant, here we just have a gallium phosphate LED which is emitting green color, but by adding arsenic to the LED, we have changed the color to orange or yellow. Fine. Hence our LED the emission will also depend upon type of dopant. Finally, when we talk about our concentration of dopant decides our color also. In our gallium arsenic phosphate, if we increase the concentration of phosphate, if the concentration of phosphate is high, we will get orange color from our gallium arsenic phosphate LED. And if the concentration of this dopant is decreased, then we will get yellow color from our same LED. So the color also depends upon our concentration of dopant. Okay, the major or important materials which are used for LED manufacture are our gallium arsenic GaAs, we have gallium arsenic phosphate GaSP, and we have gallium phosphate GaP. These are some of the materials which are used for our LED fabrication. Okay. Now, when I say that our LED is working, okay. Now, if LED is working, it means LED is forward bias. Now the question arises, at how much forward bias the LED will properly work. For an LED to give maximum intensity of light, the forward current through the LED should be greater than or equals to 20 milliampere. Greater than equals to 20 milliampere. At 20 milliampere, the intensity of light will be maximum through the LED. Okay. And when the LED is reverse bias, it will not emit any kind of light and it behaves as normal diode. Why it will not emit any light? Because during reverse bias, there is no current due to majority carriers. If there is no current due to majority carriers, there will be no recombination, and if there is no recombination, there will be no emission of energy. If there is no emission of energy in the form of light, then there will be no light. So in case of reverse bias, the LED will work as normal diode, but when forward bias, it will emit light. Okay. And the operating lifetime of our LED is very large. The operating lifetime of LED is around your 1 lakh hours. An LED can efficiently operate for this much of time. Okay. And when we compare, we have another type of emitting material, that is our LCD. LCD is nothing, it is liquid crystal display. Liquid crystal display. Liquid crystal display. When we compare LED and LCD, LED is faster than LCD because the response time of LED is in microseconds. Okay. And for LCD, the response time is in milliseconds. So since the response time is small, our LED always operates faster than our LCDs. Talking about applications, we have different applications. We use LED as display device. We have LED displays in our mobile phone, in our TV, laptop, in our computers. We have LED displays. It can also be used as our control transmitter, like in our remotes. Okay. LEDs used in designing of optocouplers. Optocouplers are the materials which are used in our optical communication. Optocouplers are the devices, actually they are used in our optical communication, where we use optical fibers. And LEDs are also used in our toys, decoration light. Nowadays we are getting LED bulbs, LED tube light. So everything is moving towards LED. When we talk about our light emitting any form of light, we are moving towards LED because the lifetime is high, response time is small, and the power dissipation is also very small. The power dissipation is in milliwatt. Okay. So this is all from our LED. This is how our LED works. Okay. Fine. Let's study about laser. Laser is our next topic. We will study about laser. Laser simply stands for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. So laser is a short name for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. Okay, to understand this principle, first of all we need to know three things, because laser action is based upon our absorption, emission, and then our population inversion. Okay, so when we talk about our laser is basically a source of light which is highly directional. High directional means all the light emitting from laser is in a single direction. Okay, it is monochromatic. Monochromatic simply means that the light is always of single color. Fine. And the basic mechanism of light emission is same, which is similar to our LED. However, in LED the light is incoherent, but in case of laser light is coherent. Coherent simply means that the continuous light which is being emitted from our laser will be of same phase. But in case of LED it is not continuous, and if it is continuous then it will be non-coherent. Okay, or we simply call as incoherent. So to understand laser action we will study 4 different principles. So we have our laser action is based on 4 principles. First it is absorption, then it is spontaneous emission, then stimulated emission, and then it is population inversion. So laser action is based upon these 4 principles. We will study that, we will try to understand them one by one. Simple topics are there. First of all we will talk about absorption. To understand absorption, let us consider that an atom with an electron is in its ground state. Okay, so we are considering that we have 2 different energy states. E1 is our ground state, okay, and E2 is some state which is at higher energy. So we are considering that we have an atom, and the electrons in an atom are at ground energy state, which is E1. When energy is provided to our electron, if I am providing this energy in the form of photon means light, okay, then it will get excited and it will reach our E2, energy state E2, and we are supplying this energy h nu is our photon energy which is being provided to our electron at energy state E1. When this electron from E1 reaches to our energy state E2, which is our excited state, then we call this process as absorption. This process is called absorption. Fine. Now we have electron at energy E2. We have electron in the energy state E2. We have electron here, and this E1 was our ground state. The excited electron will stay on higher energy level for a very short period of time. It will remain in higher energy level for a time duration of 10 raised to the power minus 8 seconds. 10 raised to the power minus 8 seconds. Now this energy E2 state is not a stable state. Why it is not a stable state? Because the energy state E2 is at higher energy, and according to our energy hierarchy in nature, every object which is at higher energy level remains unstable. Okay, as compared to our object which is at our ground level. So based upon that principle of nature, our E2 energy state, which is excited state of electron, is not stable. So this electron will jump back to the ground state. This electron will jump back to our ground state, that is E1. Fine. In this process, the electron will give out the energy h nu, which was absorbed by our electron, and this energy which is being emitted by our electron will now be in the form of radiation. Okay, so this electron, while coming back from E2 to E1, will emit the absorbed energy in the form of radiation. This process occurs spontaneously, so it is called spontaneous emission. Fine, it will be called spontaneous emission. Now let us consider a situation. Let us consider a situation in which the atom is in excited state and the photon of energy h nu is falling on the atom. Okay, now if the atom is in this E2 was excited state and we have electron in this excited state E2. So when this electron in energy state E2 is incident by a photon energy, I say that some energy is applied to this electron in the energy state E2, and that applied energy forces this electron to jump back to its ground state. This electron has not come to ground state on its own. This electron was forced to come to the ground state due to the application of some photon energy. So if I say that h nu was our incident photon which have forced this electron to jump to state E1, then when this electron is jumping from E2 to E1, it will emit its energy, and its energy will be equal to h nu also. Means the energy of incoming photon and the total energy of outgoing photon will be equal. However, this process is stimulated emission. This process is stimulated emission. Why it is stimulated? Because it is forced emission. The electron was in E2 state, but it was forced to come to E1 whenever this incident photon strike this electron. Okay, the important point for stimulated emission is that it is coherent with incident radiation. Means the phase of incident radiation and the phase of emitted radiation will be same, will be equal. So this is our stimulated emission. Finally, the most important part of this complete laser action is our population inversion. Okay, now when we talk about population inversion, we know that in normal condition the number of electrons is the number of electrons at higher energy level is lower than the population of ground state, because we know that the electrons at ground state will be more. If I am saying that ground state has low level energy and it is stable energy state, so more number of electrons will be present in E1 state as compared to E2. Okay, for stimulated emission to take place, higher energy level should be more populated than ground state, because when more number of electrons will be in E2, they will be forced to come to E1 due to the supply of this energy. But if I have less number of electrons in E2 and I try to force them to E1, they will require a large energy. Why? Because there are large number of electrons already in E1. So this electron to to make place at E1, it should dispose an electron from E1 state. Okay. So when this is achieved, the system is called population inversion or inverted population. So when the electrons at E2, the number of electrons at E2 will be greater than number of electrons of E1, number of electrons at E2 is greater than number of electrons at E1. We say that it is population inversion. Fine. So it is the process in which the population of a particular higher energy state is made more than the ground state. And how it is made more than the ground state? It was due to the absorption. So to understand this complete process together, let us join all the process. First of all, what will happen? We will apply some photon energy, and due to this photon energy, the electron from E1 will reaches to the E2 state during absorption. Okay. Now when they are getting when they will reach from E1 to E2, due to the absorption of energy, there will be a time when all the electrons from E1 will reach the state E2. When this happens, there will be population inversion, because all the electrons are now at E2 state and E1 is vacant. Okay, so there will be population inversion. Some of the electrons will come back to the E1 state due to a spontaneous emission, and some of the electrons will be forced to come to the E1 state due to a stimulated emission. So during the stimulated emission, there will be emission of light, and that light will be coherent and continuous, and this will be a visible light to us. Okay, so in this way our laser will work. Fine. A system in which population inversion is achieved is generally termed as active system. So when we say that our lasers are working, that our laser is on, it means that actually laser is in active state. For laser action to take place, the stimulated emission should be dominant over spontaneous emission, because if it is not dominant, if the number of electrons coming from E2 to E1 due to the spontaneous emission is large, then there will be very few electrons which will be left for the stimulated emission, and due to this a very small light will be generated. Okay. And the method of this rising of particles from lower state to higher state is also called pumping of electrons. Why it is called pumping? Because the electrons are getting towards E2 state from E1, so they are getting pumped. It is also called pumping of state. Fine. So this is all about our laser. This is how our laser works. We also have different type of lasers. We have solid state laser, we have semiconductor laser, we have gaseous lasers. Okay. If I talk about semiconductor lasers are fabricated with direct band gap semiconductors, just like we have used in our LED, but this direct band gap semiconductors have larger carrier lifetime. And when we say that we have a laser device, for a laser device a resonator circuit is provided. This resonator circuit is provided to alter the wavelength of radiated light, because we know that for the light which we need, for example, if I need red light from our laser, so the light being emitted from the electrons coming from E2 to E1 should be of red color wavelength. If it is not of red color wavelength, we will use a resonator circuit for that process. Fine. So this is all about our laser and our LEDs. These are simple topics, and